All right, well, hello, good evening, and welcome to our 2026 installment of the New Physicians and New Parents webinar. We have four panelists, a new one this year, and some new babies that have come in since the last time we did this webinar. I'm Jenny Flynn, Vice President of Communications and Member Engagement for the Illinois Academy. I'm also a mom of two, both of whom are in college, so I am way down the road on this journey. And I did work at the Academy the entire lifetimes of both my children. As a reminder, this is our commitment to diversity and inclusion, and we hope that tonight's activity reflects that commitment and those values. Some simple, whoops, went too far. Some simple reminders that you should keep yourself on mute, but feel free to keep your camera on. And of course, bonus points if your children pop into view at any time. You can use the chat feature to share responses, contribute ideas, and ask questions for our panelists throughout the presentation. We'll also leave time for you to unmute and ask at the end as well. We do need your input on our poll questions as they will help shape the presentation. And then we invite you to provide a Google review for us at the end of the event. We'll have a QR code for that. There is no CME on this one, but there is also no post-test either. We will share the recording and a summary and slides from the event tomorrow. With that, I'm going to start off with our first presenter. They'll all introduce themselves and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks everyone for joining. I like to think of this panel as like a support group, and hopefully this whole session will be the same. So yeah, like Jenny said, please post your questions, and I look forward to learning from you as well. So I'm Becca Madrill. I'm a board member of the IAFP. I am a family outpatient physician at Loyola at the Maywood Clinic. I also serve as the Assistant Family Medicine Clerkship Director for Stritch School of Medicine, as well as the Assistant Patient-Centered Medicine 1 Course Director. I have those two lovely kiddos in the picture. So Blake is now 6. Oh man, I'm barely a new parent anymore. And Emily is 2. So I got pregnant with Blake during my last year, third year of residency, and had him as a 4th-year chief. So I think, again, we're going to talk a lot tonight, but I would say the most important takeaway that I have about parenting is just learning to go with the flow, which is very hard for my type A me. And we'll kind of go through some of the pivots and things like that. But thanks again for joining us tonight. I look forward to talking to you more.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Mustafa Alavi. I'm an IAFP board member as well. I'm the second vice president. I work at Erie Family Health Centers in Evanston, Skokie. I'm the site medical director there, a full scope family physician, and I work with the University of Chicago residency. Like Becca said, it's been a journey. Having kids, lots of life lessons to share. Obviously can't share them all in one session here, but I have 2 kids, one who's 4 years old and our daughter who's 18 months. Both me and my wife work full time, and both of our kids are in full-time daycare. One way children have added value to my life is just like we have much more funner dinner conversations, chatty, and it's just our dinners are crazy. Our 18-month-old is always just in a chaos mode in a fun way. And honestly, for me as a leader, both in terms of like teaching residents and as a leader for my site, I honestly taking care of children has, I think, helped my leadership skills in terms of coming a new perspective on having a growth mindset, being more patient and empathetic. And it really, I've seen myself when I reflect grow mainly due to my kids. Having kids teaches you communication. You have to communicate with your partner to a different level. And yeah, we've only grown in that aspect in terms of my own personal relationship.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. What it says here, I'm a past board member. And at the time when I had my first baby, who is now 5, I was core faculty for the family medicine residency at Northwestern at Grace Lake, or Lake Forest, I should say. And since then, I have transitioned to doing full-time integrated medicine consults at Northwestern, but still doing a lot of resident and med student teaching. But yeah, so we had 2 under 2, and then we had 3 under 5. And so right now they're 5, 4. Actually, Jack just turned 4 2 days ago, and Peter, who just turned 1 on Christmas Eve. And yes, my husband is not in medicine, but he has a full-time job with long hours. And similar to Becca, we've done a lot of iterations of different things, but what's kind of worked for us is having the youngest with a nanny, and now the older two are in a little Montessori school together, which has been really nice. So yes, lots of life lessons and still always learning along the way.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen. I'm a resident at the family medicine program at Delnor through Northwestern. I had my little guy, Henry, back in October. He's our first. So my husband stays at home and works a couple of remote jobs. So he's been the primary caregiver. My sister also lives with us and helps take care of him in these early months while I get through intern year. For me, it was just kind of a matter of figuring out like how to do maternity leave, how to be a parent in this very early stage. I honestly feel like I hope to learn a lot from this presentation as well as share some of my experience since I'm so new to just being a doctor and also like being a parent. So, yeah, that's kind of what we have going now. It's kind of chaos, but it's also a lot of love. And I think the biggest lesson right now is just learning how to lean on our support system.
Great. So so between the four of us, we hopefully have most aspects of or stages in parenthood for what the panel is. So our goals are to like consider a big picture things like childcare, college savings, sleep schedules, breastfeeding, formula feeding, how to use resources and apps to help you parent to the next level, how to advocate for accommodations if you need them in school, residency, or as an attending. And just like Becca mentioned, this is more or less a support network chat. So we want this to be informal. We want you all to put in questions into the chat. Please do not hesitate. We're going to break it down by specific topics. But again, please put in your questions in the chat. And like we introduce our families first. We have 5 kind of bucket items that we're gonna cover, being like FMLA and parental leave, feeding, both breast and formula feeding, sleep schedules, childcare, time management as kind of overarching categories. And again, please throw in your questions and desires and what you're hoping to get from this talk in the chat. And then we have a QR code as well that we'll share for some to understand our audience.
And hopefully you're seeing the poll right now on our audience as far as where you are in your current career stage. And with that, we'll give another second or two, and then we'll end the poll and we'll see what we've got. Okay, here we go. Sharing results. Hopefully you're seeing got residents, early career physicians, and a little more than 3 years in. All right, we're going to go to the next question. Oh, good. They all must have all gone. So we've got 1 child, a baby on the way, and thinking about it. And the topics, it looks like everything but feeding came up. So why don't we spend the most time on those options, and then we can always come back and pick up feeding if we have to go a little out of order. That should be okay.
Great. And yeah, with the interest of the slides, we can just go straight into the FMLA parental leave, if that makes sense.
Here we go.
All right, and anyone please chime in with your questions about this topic. So parental leave is the biggest takeaway, depending on your stage in life, so I know that there aren't any medical students here, but residents and younger attendings, is planning ahead as much as you can. I know that's sometimes hard in residency, especially, but communicating that and understanding what your institution's parental leave policies are, because every employer has different policies. And that means as soon as you know or are planning, talk with HR and your medical director or your program director, and and understand what that policy is in writing. So say for my institution in specific, I know, sorry, for those that don't know what FMLA entails that you get 12 weeks of unpaid time, federally protected time. You won't lose your job. You won't get kicked out from residency. 12 weeks of protected unpaid time. But each institution or employer likely will have some component of paid time in that federally protected 12 weeks. So some institutions do as much as 12 weeks. Residencies can support up to 12 weeks, and some institutions do 6 weeks of paid time, 6 weeks of use your PTO time off. That's important to understand if you need to be aware of that financially speaking. And there are strategies you can somewhat, I'm going to use the word game your FMLA leave in terms of, so like, for example, my situation, my wife's employer had offered 3 months of paid parental leave, which she took right after our baby was born. Both of our babies were born. We wanted to maximize the time our kid stayed home before going to daycare, which was the option we were going to choose for our childcare needs. So I spent my parental leave spending 2 to 4 weeks, closer to 3 to 4 weeks at home after the child was born, went back to work, and then I went on intermittent FMLA leave, meaning I broke up my time off. I was home with our child 3 days a week after my wife went back to work. And then we had family plans the other 2 days a week. And we were able to extend our child staying home from daycare, which, as we'll go into later, any childcare option, daycare, nanny, is pricey. And so that for us helped us financially speaking, helped us bonding with our baby before going into daycare and all the infections that ensue with daycare. So that's one way that you can consider FMLA.
I think also, sorry to interrupt, like knowing what the policies are, but it's okay to ask if it's not a policy. Like personally, my institution offered the FMLA and that was it, but I really wanted to take 4 months. So I asked for it and they're like, look, Becca, we want you to be happy and we want you to stay here. So we'll give you the extra month. And then my little lady ended up in the PICU for like a week for breathing stuff. And then I was like, you know what? I actually want 5 months. So then I went back and they agreed with that too. So knowing what's there, but then also advocating for yourself can be helpful too.
Exactly, that's a good point. And I, like my wife as well, asked her employers at she was at 2 different jobs for both her kids. Both of them allowed 4 months of leave time. And one was paid for the 4th month, which was shocking. And then the other one was like, yeah, you can go on extra leave for that extra 4th month, which we were financially able to do. So that's something. And as a medical director, I have folks who go on parental leave, and yeah, we're very accommodating too. If someone wants that extra month or more time, our institution isn't able to do paid extra leave time, but I will more than happily support extra leave until someone's ready to come back to work. And I would think and hope that everyone in medicine or family medicine in particular would be accommodating to those sort of leave requests. So don't be shy to ask if you need that time. For residencies, and again, I did not have a child in residency. I had my child a year after in attending HUD. So Kathleen might have more to chime in here. But so there is a blanket policy for ACGME, AAFP, and AMA that we'll have informationally in these slides. But in general, ACGME requires programs provide at least 6 weeks of paid parental leave and then 1 week of paid time outside of that. And then, sorry, that was ACGME. And then ABFM allows up to 12 weeks of total time off in a year, up to 8 weeks being family leave, and then 4 weeks of like your vacation PTO time. But they specifically say programs are not required to grant that much leave. And it essentially comes down to the higher institutions give the programs more or less autonomy and authority with how they do their parental leaves. And so that's where it really takes having discussions with your program director. If you're in a, like, see what other residents have done within your program and how they navigated parental leave. How did your third years do it if they had a child? And some people do things like reading electives so that they can still be in residency and count towards graduation, things like that. Kathleen, do you have much to chime here? I'm assuming you do.
Yeah. So obviously, I kind of came right out of the gate of residency going on maternity leave, and I did get my 6 weeks. And then the way my program works was I could use some of my vacation to buffer that. And just the way that Henry's birthday fell, it put me coming back along the holidays. And I think the unsaid portion of this is that really, if you stray from this sort of blanket 6 weeks slash your vacation and you want more time, really the only thing that happens is you extend your residency. Like for my situation, I chose not to extend my residency to graduate, but that means that for at least 40 weeks of a year in residency, you have to have your like half day continuity clinic. So basically, it was really that continuity clinic that if I missed an additional week or two of that, it would extend my residency a bit. So I don't think it's super cut and dry, and my program was very understanding and worked really well with me, and were able to help me come back kind of in a part-time fashion during the holidays because it was my first Christmas and New Year's with Henry. But it, I think you just kind of have to work with your program, and this kind of goes into the preparation. I knew I wanted to start a family when I was interviewing, so it was really important to me to have a family-oriented place. And I feel like that's been true for me. We've been able to kind of just work around my schedule. We've been able to get me back in a way where it wasn't too crazy and hectic being freshly postpartum. So I think just really making sure that you are in contact as soon as possible with your program director is probably the most important because like the further in advance you can plan, the more likely you are to get what you need. And you never know, like you never know when baby needs to spend some time in the NICU or things like that too. So it's always good to just be prepared and to be really transparent in the beginning.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, we need that perspective. This is, again, like I mentioned, this is informational. And so like I mentioned, ABFM is only intended to address maximum time away from training that is allowable for a resident to become board eligible. It does not override sponsoring institution or residency program HR and training policies, which will continue to operate at the local level as the primary source of allowable time away from training. So again, have those conversations. And like if I were in that position, I would really want to understand like how, like I would want to, again, I'm going to use the word game it so that I can get the maximum time with my child at home without extending residency. And then if you're also comfortable with extending your residency, then I would want to spend even more time with my child at home in that newborn phase. But this comes down to also your own personal preferences and what you desire with that time. And this is AAFP's policy, which is generally very similar. And then we could go to the next slide. And I believe it's AMA's policy after this. So they're all kind of share the same themes here. And the next slide. Then we could go after this. So for those that want that information, if you need to understand what the policies are, it would be helpful for you guys to know what the policies are when you go into these conversations with your program directors.
And even some of the AMA policies really relevant for in practice, wherever you may be an employed physician. Those are good benchmarks about parental leave being treated similarly as other medical reasons.
Mhm. So this was the last topic on that poll. So is there, now I'm forgetting what the other topics were that people wanted to chat about.
You may want to chime in about this new law since it just took effect on January 1st. And I remember Dr. Madrill was really key in making sure that everyone was aware of this one.
Popcorn Becca.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a mom group chat for my old co-residents, and this has been a big talk. That there is a new Illinois law that mandates that employers provide paid breaks for nursing employees to express milk for at least 1 year after childbirth. Again, we've talked a lot about like planning ahead and talking through because this can be helpful because depending on your pay structure, once you graduate, if you're RVU based or salaried, again, these breaks must be paid so it can't affect your productivity. The dreaded sleep.
And sorry, Jane, can you remind, I can talk, I just forgot what the rank order was, and I'm happy to, we can just talk about sleep too.
I think
think
time
it is-
management was number one, but I think sleep was it was also up there, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. Please
Yeah, then we
correct
could
me
talk
if I'm
about
wrong.
sleep then if it was up there. So, um, yeah, so I honestly, this is a topic I talk with all of my patients, and I honestly, I was not an expert on, or I wouldn't say I'm an expert in any of these to begin with, but I would say I feel much more strongly about this topic after having two kids, and going through sleep schedules, and I'm somewhat considered a drill sergeant in our household. Um, I learned early on that sleep schedules are just so important for routines for children and just help your overall structure and day. There are obviously, if you have a newborn, there's no such thing as a sleep schedule. Babies are born essentially nocturnal, and it's just tough initially, but like over time, a sleep schedule does develop, and having a consistent sleep schedule, meaning putting your kid down about the same time every night for bedtime, having planned naps like early on for a newborn. Once they're on a napping more regularly, it's about 3 naps during the day, and then they eventually will drop their third nap and have about 2 naps during the day, and then transition to about 1 nap during the day. Um, this is an area that parents may butt heads with each other about too, um, and not in a bad way, but more or less when it's 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, your baby wakes up crying, and one person is like, just put a pacifier in. Like, no, we need to feed the baby. No, and like no one is in their right state of mind at 2 or 3 in the morning when you're having these conversations. So it's and this was like a struggle for us with our first child. Our second child, like a beautiful sleeper. We feel very lucky, but our first child, we had really, really talk about this, and it was leading to some hard 2 a.m., 3 a.m. conversations about what should we do. And then we decided we need to just like get some help, and there's a lot of resources. And and by help meaning there are many, many different books. So my own family doctor recommended the book on the right, Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child by Mark Weisbluth, who's actually a pediatrician here in Chicago and has you might have seen they're in Chicago, Weisbluth Pediatrics. Um, this really helped for me to, and my wife. We both read. It has chapters. Like your kid is like, it's a thick book, but it says like if your kid is X age, read just chapters 1, 2, 3, and a chapter for your kid's age. So it's actually a quick read. For me, early on with a new baby, it really helps solidify like understanding sleep cues, understanding nap schedules, understanding, do you let your kid cry it out? What's the right way of crying it out? Do you not let them cry it out at all? It really broke down the data behind like how soon your kid will be able to sleep through the night, and honestly normalize that having children and babies learn to self-soothe is a good thing and does not hurt your child long term. And learning to self-soothe helps them later be able to just sleep through the night. And like one 2-year-old, or like, especially when I see kids that I take care of who they mention that they're 2 years old and they're still waking up 2 to 3 times at night to feed. It really comes down to sleep training. And I'm really encouraging folks to like look into a sleep training schedule. It's hard to be directive here about saying this is the right way because every child is different and every child has just will respond at a different age, meaning some babies might do well with sleep training at an earlier age, 5 or 6 months, versus some like just might need to feed until later. And there's in my some of this is just practical experience. I would say there is no one right age for every single baby. So, and it has to do also with parental preferences. So I recommend a book on the right. There's also the book called Crib Sheets. We have it. I've read some of it. But essentially what me and my partner did, we both read things online, read these books, and then compromised together. We had differing opinions about how to sleep train our child, and we came up with a way that would work. And then once you decide on a plan, the plan is to stick with that plan, meaning don't decide on you did it for one day and you're like, oh, that didn't work, and then stop because you will reinforce those habits. So really sticking through the plan for, I would like say at least a week, and like don't give up, because that's like have that end goal in sight, be consistent with your partner and stick with it, and it will pay dividends. I would say like having a sleep trained child like helps you as a parent sleep better too over the night. You'll be less crabby during the day. You'll be able to get your free time at night, which is very limited when it's like 8 p.m. your kids are asleep and then you're exhausted and going to sleep. It will give you so much more energy. You'll have that time with your partner. It really is. I'm a strong advocate for it. I know there are parents that choose not to sleep their child. That is fine. There's no right way. But sleep schedules are, in general, important for kids to have routines. And then I know some parents who've done things like classes like taking care of babies. And I have many friends who have done that. I believe these are paid subscriptions that you could do online, and that can help reinforce some of the principles of sleep training. And then another book someone recommended, 12 Hours by 12 Weeks, a sleep book. Oh, that was you, Anna.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did, I thought taking care of babies was great, especially for baby number one. It really just dives into the basics, and gives some good tips. And then for our boys, for all three of them, we used 12 hours by 12 weeks, which was initially recommended to us by our pediatrician. And it worked like a charm for all three. You know, like Mustafa said, every baby is different. So might not work for all babies, but for our babies, it was great. And I agree, you know, some people choose not to sleep train. I think, especially when you're going back to work at 3 months, 4 months, like five, like the more sleep that you can get while you're going back to work, the better. Um, and I should say 12 hours by 12 weeks is actually like they will sleep. Like our boys were sleeping 12 hours by 12 weeks, and I was breastfeeding. And I never lost like supply or anything. So it's doable. You can do it. If that's what you want, you can do it. I've also had a lot of physician friends who hired night doulas. I know it's expensive, but you know, if that's the right choice for your family and that's the support you need in order to stay sane and be a healthy, happy parent, then you know, that can be a great option too.
I absolutely love everything you guys are saying and needed you, Nibi, as my kids' doctors. I did not sleep train. So just to give a different perspective, especially with my second, when she was in the PICU for RSV, like every time she cried, I got like had a lot of like healthcare anxiety and like wanted to make sure she's okay. She's actually a better sleeper than my 6-year-old right now. So I probably should have, but eventually they will sleep through the night. And yeah, like everyone said, you just have to do like what's right for you in your comfort zone. Then everyone's gonna have an opinion about sleep. It's like no matter who you're talking to. But I think kind of the bottom line is like pick something that works with you and stick with it. And as always, you can always like shift and transition if it's just not working anymore.
All right. Any questions on that? I think we talked Kathleen, I know you're a little early on the phase to really be thinking about sleep schedules, maybe.
Miraculously, my son has been sleeping through the night pretty much since I went back to work full time.
See, you don't even need
Amazing.
I don't even know
That
why.
would make it
The 4-month sleep regression is coming, I'm sure.
They're always teething, is what we say.
Yeah, and hearing a baby cry is just really hard at night. And that's, yeah, and I would say for our families, like for our first child, my wife had to sleep in another room for a few days while I managed the crying because I have no soul comparatively. So I'm just kidding.
Actually, something I will
Oh,
say that we saw somewhere was that if it's like we have a bedside bassinet, and at one point someone said, "Oh, have dad sleep on the baby side." And when we made that switch, I noticed that we did, and I breastfed too. So I think part of it is just like they can just sense you when you're the food. So I feel like having dad try like the bassinet side was really helpful. So maybe that's something too.
Great. And yeah, nighttime feeding is just business, meaning they want to play and chat at 2 in the morning. That's not the time to play and chat. Change a diaper, feed, back to the bassinet. But that's drill sergeant me. If no questions, yeah, we can move on to the next topic. This was one of the bigger topics, yeah.
So again, I think this is one that we'll all kind of talk about. And kind of mentioned in my intro, it's like all about like going with the flow and then having to create a backup plan to a backup plan, which can be hard depending on like your support system. But especially like in winter right now when everyone's sick, it's like one week is one day is different from the next. But I think so personally, just like I had planned on sending my first one to an in-home daycare and then COVID hit. And because I was treating patients in the ICU with COVID at that time, we got kicked out of our in-home daycare. So we had to pivot really quick into having a nanny, which to be honest, again, I think the next slide, we go through some of like the benefits and like and takeaways of the different kind of setups. But I think again, like what's just tricky about medicine and like thinking about being in medicine and like thinking about childcare is like our crazy hours, or we like to call them non-traditional hours, where you're working before, starting at 7 or even earlier, or if you're on call or working evenings and what that might look like. And that can be really hard. When you're looking at more kind of traditional hours of some more like daycare centers or even at-home daycares. So again, I think it's like when you're starting to do that dive in one of these daycare centers, I had to tour when I was pregnant and we still didn't get in. So looking as soon as you are thinking about needing or when you might need one. Some employers offer some daycare at reduced costs. There can be, if you're into social media, there's Facebook groups. We even have something in the town that I live called like Mom Mail, where people will post different in-home daycare babysitting settings, which I don't think is unique to where I live, but can be super helpful also for free things. But again, if we go to the next part, we just kind of as a group brainstormed on the next slide some of the positives and negatives. And so right now, my daughter is more in kind of like a formal daycare. And again, she's like 2. I think some of the benefits, like definitely cost effective. They do her food now that she's eating normal food, which can be easy. So I just have to get her there. There's a very set structure for them on different activities. And she like now she's like pointing out her letters. I'm like, where did you learn that? And just I think it's really cool to see how much they learn when they can be in those settings. Daycare centers are like reliable, even during COVID, they were the ones that were still going. But where if have a nanny or a family member or an in-home daycare setting and the person gets sick, there's not really a backup. So you're kind of left a little high and dry. Again, illnesses right now, every other day, I feel like is something, or there's a note about something. And again, in a daycare center, sometimes off-hour schedules can be a little bit harder to accommodate. From a nanny, which is like I always say was like an extension of me for that first like year for us. The positives is they just come in in the middle of the winter or when it's negative below. You're not worrying about getting them in all their garb to get them somewhere at a certain time. Definitely more of that like one-on-one attention. Depending on your relationship or things that you've talked about when you're hiring your nanny, they can do other household chores like the cooking, some light cleaning, and even laundry, which can be super helpful. Again, you're usually hiring your nanny for a certain amount of hours. They have a little bit more sometimes flexibility with their schedules. It is the more pricey option. They still, your nanny deserves very much to take time off as well as sick days, but can kind of leave you without a backup. And again, sometimes you're responsible for providing certain benefits or, when you think about different insurance things for them. Family is so wonderful. Again, some people are lucky enough to have them close by and physically able or with time to do that. Obviously, lots of bonding, very cost effective, and they can be much more flexible. And again, that individual attention. I think some of the negatives can be so, again, everyone has different views of parenting or kind of grew up in different parenting generations, let's just say. So different styles and different philosophies can be different. There's definitely different ways to navigate it. And I think part of that, we go into resources. But sometimes at home they'll have different structures than you'll be used to, or if you're trying to set up certain plans. Again, no backup necessarily if someone's sick. And again, if structures or styles are a little bit different, it can cause a little bit stress on that relationship.
Do
So
any of our
again,
panelists who were used any of these three options want to chime in on their own experiences with either of those three options?
I'll just chime in. I mean, I've done daycare for both of my kids, and like my first child has gone through, I would on his fourth daycare now, for various reasons, like cost effective wise versus convenience. And yeah, we definitely you will manage a constant runny nose, and that's okay. Every kid in daycare has a runny nose, and yeah, definitely expect your kid to get sick the week after daycare, and that's okay. And I mean, there, and I want to normalize that there is a lot of like parental guilt with like especially the first time you drop your kid off to daycare, but over time I like Becca mentioned the value I've seen from like that socialization, that structure, like the amount of things my kid has come home saying that I never taught you that, like how did you learn that, like it's coming home at 3 telling me what Jupiter is, and like there's no way I taught him the planets, and now he's like teaching me things, so it's been really rewarding, honestly. In in my like it's been helpful for us to use daycare.
you guys are saying just crying with the first day. I still cry sometimes. I have to leave them. Does it get easier? I don't know.
Let's see. So we have, like I mentioned, we have a nanny for our youngest, which I think is one thing that's really nice is so we didn't hire her until after we had our second. And it's so nice to be able to breastfeed instead of pump. Like sometimes, like if I'm doing, like I do a lot of telemedicine, which I'm happy to talk about later, but like I'm at home, I can actually breastfeed my child. Like when I have a break, nanny brings him in, then she takes him out. And so that's been really nice and a huge perk. I wasn't doing telemedicine with the first two, and so that's been a really nice change. Um, and then also what was mentioned about like out, and I was going to talk about this in time management, but like the more you can outsource, the better. So when the baby's napping, she will do some laundry, she will do dishes, she will meal prep if I ask her to, she will run to the grocery store because it's within walking distance, so she'll take the baby. And so all of those things let me have more time with the baby ultimately, which is the goal. And so that's been really nice. And then I think the other thing is like there are different daycares. And so like initially when we had our first and we put him in one, like we ended up moving him and he liked the second one much better. There's like different styles. So like if it's not a good fit, I always say it's not a permanent decision. You can always pivot. And like I said, you can transfer between any of these options. And actually today, our it's expensive to have both, you know, like daycare or school and nanny, but we found between two working parents, it's the only way to guarantee that we're not having to like constantly one of us be out when a kid is out. Because if one of the kids from school is out, then the nanny will take care of him also at home. Um, but today our nanny called in and I had to use a PTO day because there was just no other way. So, yeah, different things.
Great. And I'll just add on that note, thanks for mentioning like the breastfeeding. Yeah. Yeah, with childcare, yeah, there's a lot of coordination of the bottles and like the amount of sterilizing bottles and dishwashing we were doing on a nightly basis. It does take a lot of planning and prep to do that, and either with formula or breastfeeding. And I would say we might run out of time to actually talk specifically about the breastfeeding section and formula feeding, but I would say really utilize your non-breastfeeding partners like myself, as I actually learned from someone else on this panel years ago about being like the milk manager. And so like my wife uh like would pump while she's at work, and my job was to like collect all the milk at the end of the day, put them in the sealed baggies, get them in the freezer or the fridge, and plan all the bottles for the next day for daycare. So really use your partners for support. All right, and with that, we can move on to time management.
All right. Um, and I know some of these were contributed by our other panelists, so please chime in. Um, I think the one thing I'll say is, so one thing that I've done since having kids is I have pieced together here and there FTE opportunities that are non-clinical. So I actually wear like many multiple hats, and my total clinic time is much less. All my other FTE is like curriculum development and like a mentorship role thing and all of this stuff. And so because of this, I'm able to do like I'm the one that takes our kids to school. I'm the one that picks them up. I'm the one that takes them to the afternoon activities. The drawback is then I end up doing a lot of work after they go to bed. But for now, in this season of life, that's, you know, I want to be with them while they're awake, as much as I can. It's not always easy, but that's kind of the system that we have right now. So that's totally an option. Like depending on what you want to do during the day, there are different opportunities out there that you can look for. Um, does anybody else want to chime? Oh, like I said, we have a nanny that I outsource things. Um, anybody
Yeah.
want, yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
chime in these other
yeah, Becca,
ones?
you go ahead.
I mean, I think like, you know, they always say, oh, when you have a kid, your village, you have a village. Sometimes the village isn't there. And, you know, and that's okay. Maybe you don't live by your family or they're not physically capable at the time. Then sometimes you have to like pay for your village, and that's okay too,
Yes,
with
that's what
like
I always
cleaning
say. It's
lady
you got to
and
buy your
like
village nowadays.
yeah, like clear cleaning lady. You're like, and I think there's again a lot of guilt, but again, it just allows more time to like be with your kids, and like that's okay too. And then yeah, I mean, there's like Dr. Shannon said, like there's you know, for me, I took on academic roles. I also cut down my FTE for a little bit, and like that was hard. And I think like you go through all this training, and you're like, well, now I'm here and I'm an attending, and you know, luckily, you know, financially we could do it where I like could work a little bit less FTE and like still could be able to be with my kids more and be a physician and do all the things I love with the IAFP, and it kind of helped me create that balance. But I think we've talked about this like communication thing a lot. And I'm like also like follow a big believer in Dr. Becky, who's like a big parenting guru, psychologist right now. She's got a great, good inside book when you get into the discipline and parenting, but also just communicating with your children. But then my partner and I use it all well, like a lot of the times too. I'm like, oh, so it looks like you feel upset. Let's talk about this. But again, like being clear about that, having those responsibilities, and leaning into them. Like my husband's going to make the lunches every day. This is his job, and I have other jobs. But I'm just being really clear about that, and then you don't have to think about it and be grabbing to make a lunch at the last minute. And it takes time to figure it out, and you don't figure it out day one. Maybe you figure it out like a couple years in, like we have. But it takes time. And yes, Google Calendar, we share a calendar, we have everything on our calendar. And I spend a lot of time making the calendar and reviewing it every week before the week starts, so that we know we're on the same page for what the week's going to look like. I think
Yeah, and
those
I'll
are my big ones.
Yeah, and like Becca was saying, like I wish like when we first had our child that we had all of these things set up, but it's something we figured out honestly over the first year of life plus. Meaning like we didn't have a shared Google Calendar until like a year plus when we're like, oh my God, we missed like orientation for Ada and our son, and like there's so many things that like we used to be able to keep on the top of our heads, and there's just only so much brain space, and like having that shared calendar where you both can see where your partner is going to be on a given day and where the kid is going to be in terms of who's going to pick up the child, who's going to drop off the child. Really utilize a shared family calendar. Um, we realized early on we were a little bit more sporadic for dinner, and then like wasting, I would say, way too much time deciding, oh my God, it's Monday, it's 5 p.m. What are we going to do for dinner? Versus we've graduated to that. Now we have a little mini whiteboard on our fridge of every day of the week, and I take either someday in the week I will plan out the meals for the rest of the week, or at least a kind of a template, so that like it's not like we all get home from work and daycare and we're then thinking about what we're going to do. It's already like that mental energy is already done. And one thing I took away from another, when we did this at a breakfast roundtable years ago, there was a faculty member at Minnesota who called it family circus time, which she had with her partner on Sundays, where they would specifically say, at this time on Sunday, we put our circus hats on and we just like hash out for an hour the business for the week, meaning like who's going to do what on what day, what financial things you have to do, the bigger picture things you have to plan and do, that like when you're with your kid or plural kids, like there is just like zero, I would say, planning, processing time. You're just with your kid and wanting to enjoy that time.
Yeah, and I think the last point on there, and to that extent too, I do think that yeah, it don't feel it's oh my gosh, the mom guilt is so real, and I'm sure the dad guilt too. About we're doctors, we work a lot, we're passionate about our jobs too, but I found and when again it was a learning process. So with our first, I would like try and watch him, but also try and do my emails and get it done. And now I find that it's so much more meaningful, even if it's less time with the kids, to just be all in and be in the moment and be with them and do the rest another time and don't try to multitask those things. And I think Dr. Becky says things about that. And plus that's like screen time in front of them and all these things.
Yeah, great. So just to kind of wrap it up here with some general tips, because I know we do want to leave a little bit for questions. I think don't get caught up in trying to be perfect. I think it's redefining those expectations. I always say we've talked about a lot of hats, where we also always think about it as like juggling, and it's knowing what balls are made of glass and will break, and what balls are made of plastic or rubber and will bounce back. When I think of juggling all the different responsibilities that I have. So again, we talked about communication, considering less than one FTE. And I think we've all had this experience. Consider not being, and I would say do not be your child's doctor if you can. I know that we can overthink things a lot, and oh man, I love my kid's physician, and she's now one of my closest friends, and just have someone else look at your kid because otherwise it gets very, very stressful. Um, I know I'm just like kind of reading through these, but also we've talked about like being with your partner and making sure that you also have time for each other. And this craziness and being a new parent is one of the most stressful times on any relationship. As strong or as not it is, no matter what. So really trying, if we're able to plan that kid-free time, is really important. And getting it on the calendar, not just waiting for it to happen, because otherwise it just won't happen. And yes, some big life tips of like starting a college saving plan is super important. Getting a will. I've never felt like I adulted more than when we like officially signed our will. But those things are important to think about as well. And sometimes the institutions that you work for might have resources for both the college saving plan, but also for different lawyers and things that can help you with some of those other important adulting things. But I think if you haven't heard us say it many times, kids are very unpredictable and their schedules are unpredictable. So just allowing for flexibility and grace. I know, let's see. I don't know, is anyone in the room want have any questions for anyone specifically, or just all of us at large? If you don't feel comfortable talking or raising a hand, you can always put it in the chat. I don't know if anyone else had some last final words.
It's a really fun journey.
Yeah.
Like it's like chaos to a new level in terms of how many different ways your head will like be turning and managing a lot of different responsibilities, but it's such a fun process, and watching your kids grow is such a journey.
You will sleep again. It may not seem like it for a little bit, but it will happen one day.
Especially if you use your 12 weeks by 12 hours.
Yeah.
I find it
Oh,
very
and highly
encouraging that you can get kids on skis when they're that little, Dr. Shanahan.
oh, they love it. Oh, it's great. And as you can see, they do have harnesses because they prefer to not turn. They know how to turn, but they like to just throw themselves down the hill, so they need speed control.
And is that little man on a backpack?
He is.
You can ski with a child on your back?
Oh, we only did that in like the really kiddie area. You're not supposed to take them on the mountain. I wouldn't take them on the mountain.
It's a great photo.
Thank you. Highly recommend actually, like we always debated like, do we want more than one? Then do we want more than two? You get more relaxed the more kids you have because you just have to let it go and you learn what's important and what's not. So go for it.
100% agree with that.
Yeah, with that, I loved any final words of wisdom or wishes from our panelists. Each of you, please take the floor for a minute and give your parting best wishes. Right, I'll pick it up. I'll start with Dr. Carpenter as our newest of the new parents.
Oh man, I think you just have to get through it. I don't think you can ever prepare for how hard it is. It's just, I think when you can plan on having a kid, that want and that faith will carry you through. And someday you will sleep again. And that day came sooner for me than it should have. But, we're just hanging in there, just trying to figure out how to navigate all the new like roles at work and the roles at home. I think just really leaning on any support systems you can find, whether it's hired or you live near them, is really important.
Dr.
You're
Magro.
yeah, you're so impressive, Dr. Carpenter. That's amazing what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that kind of stuck with me is people always say, oh, there's no good time to have a baby, but I think there's no like bad time to have a baby. Every kind of like chapter in your training, your like journey or your life, will have different challenges. But I think no matter what, kids are such a joy and they're hard and there's tears and there's laughter and there's a whole lot of things. But they add so much to your life that yeah, it's just a wonderful and very wild ride. But yeah, on these resources, yeah, Dr. Becky, she's amazing. Also with feeding, which we did not talk about at all. But once they start like solids or 6 months, solid starts was like amazing for me and needing kind of a plan to go by. So those are two pretty awesome resources that I used a lot.
All right. Dr. Shanahan.
I think I said all of my stuff, but if anyone ever has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out directly. Um,
All right. And Dr. Alavi, any parting final comments?
Yeah, no, same here. It's like I mentioned, it's a super fun journey, and definitely take time with your partner. At the end of days, like if this is something you enjoy doing, reflect on the positives of the day, or at the end of the week. I think often like when we're out on date night, like we try to do date night now once a month, and like just yeah, reflect back about like what a beautiful family you have, and where things have gone, how you manage chaos, how things have changed in a good way. Yeah, just reflect.
All right. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. So just a reminder, we invite everyone to use that QR code and provide some comments on Google reviews. Every comment helps boost our profile on Google, which helps others find the Illinois Academy. So we appreciate your time on that.